Bertha has announced we're starting community dinner March 11th. Today's the 11th. Somebody? Anybody?
Oh, yes.
March 11th? All right, thank you. March 11th, 2022.
Yeah.
What is that? 03112022. There's probably some significance to that.
2 1s, 2 2s, and 3. It's all 3.
It's all 3. And so we had the one last week, and that was a particularly rich one. And Monica, about 25, 30 people watched that video. Yeah. Even though I didn't mention Carl's name, I promised I wouldn't, so I didn't put his name in the description. And still 30, 40 people watched it. So if you're watching this recording, thank you, community. And that's what we're trying to do with the Health Alchemy private membership, is stay out of that world, create the new world, because obviously that world's going, I call it the carcass at this point, actually. So just avoid the rotting carcass and go over here and make something new. So spring energy is kind of up, and we have, I'll call it sort of an artificial spring, because we have, sort of manipulated weather and all that. So we have to take it with a grain of salt, but nevertheless, we're going to talk about light tonight and how cleansing is an important part of spring. And sunlight's related to what we call vitamin D. There's 2 other sunlight vitamins that are never called such, but one's called vitamin F and one's called vitamin A. People don't usually associate vitamin A with sunlight, but vitamin A is actually the sunlight vitamin. That's where we got brainwashed about 100 years ago with the chemistry. And, anybody who watched the YouTube channel too, I replied to comments, because Glenn was putting some comments in, and I realized, if you have a question about something you want to talk about, then I'm happy to lead a discussion or do a video about it, what's up for people, because there's a lot of strange, the vax cure was one of my favorite queries. How many of you have seen at least 5 or 10 different, if you're vaccinated, here's the thing to do. I've seen 5 or 10 from the experts, oh, here's the way to do it, here's the 25 things you need to do, and I'm looking at these lists going, no, it's much simpler than that. So let's start with that. So chemistry, as we know it, is a photograph of a life process at a moment in time of a chosen parameter, correct? You can measure your red blood cell count at any moment in time. You can measure a certain liver enzyme. You can take a photograph of Cindy walking across the room at a moment in time, and that's an assessment, that's photograph chemistry. You can measure the lumens coming out of that light bulb, but that's not what life is doing. See, that's death. The still image of anything is death, right? The still image of you is no better than you laying in the grave in the casket. It's death. And so we study corpses in medical school. Why aren't they studying people who are long-lived and healthy and making that their model for life-giving health versus the study of death? You see? And so that's what I spent my 35 years of my career, my life, studying. How does life work? And then working backwards from sometimes channeled material. Sometimes you just don't know why something works until you ask a few people and try it a few times, and then you work backwards. And that's sort of the process of I don't know, I ended up with 2 pairs of glasses, but I'm double-fisted reading glass for some reason. That's really interesting. I ended up double-fisted. That's like, wow, double-fisted. So I've come to see that our cells and cell membranes, they aren't measuring chemistry. We don't have cell receptors measuring the COVID-19 2-A SARS-4-3 subclass 2 receptors. That's not the way life's working. Life is a process of frequency and energies, and we perceive it a certain way. We've all agreed to call it this, but like the Shanti quote, at best, words are pointers at reality. At best. What are they at worst? Manipulative tools, aren't they?
Yes.
Orwell would agree with that.
Lies, all of it.
Oh, lie. You lie. But see, that's a remedy right there, as we talk about. What's the solution? That's kind of always in our conversations, because I'm with Gene and Bernie, 24/7, or I'm at this other place working with people 24/7, and there's no real room for the shadow to really hang anymore when you have constant supervision. You know, it's like a child with a constant parent. So, you know, there's only so far I can personally go off into Shadowland. I really attempted this morning. I really tried to go into Shadowland for a while, but there was just so much love coming in my quiet. I was like, yeah, okay, oblivion's not going to happen. Just love. And that's why I hope for anybody that, you know, we learn these processes, and the process of life is love. It's like, what a miracle that nature takes one seed and will make 10,000 or more seeds out of one seed. Have you ever think about that? You plant one seed, and that one seed makes tens of thousands of seeds. Like a mullein plant. One mullein plant can make millions and millions of seeds. Have you ever seen those mullein seeds? Yeah. You know, they're tiny little things and flying everywhere. And so, why were we being drawn away from nature is the question, you know? Like, so a remedy is humor, right? Just poking fun, you know, we're in the theater. So now the audience is over there. Joanne, I really tried, I swear. Yes, and you want to be careful with the thorny, the little hairs going the wrong way. I've never had it happen, but I've heard mixed messages from people that you really don't want to risk it, you know? So just make sure you wipe the right way. But yes, the plant doesn't appreciate being used as such, but you know, it's more of a stately, like one herbalist used mullein actually as a homeopathic for someone that has bad scoliosis, because the mullein plant grows straight up. So the homeopathic energy is to have your spine grow straight up. And he's corrected people just by putting it on their spine. Yeah. You
have to do it early in life, or can you do it later on in life?
You know, I can give you his name. You could ask him. He's very available. His name's Matthew Wood. He's out in Minnesota, and he was. It's probably a stage name. I don't know. Maybe Matthew Wood. Yeah, it's like my teacher, Michael Tierra. Come on, you're an herbalist and your last name's Tierra. I mean, come on.
You're born for it.
Maybe, you know, his kids are Tierras. You know,
there's a bunch of Dr. Paynes in the world.
Right.
Oh, P-A-Y-N-E.
And P-A-I-N-E.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Dr. Payne. Oh, we have a Zoom user. That must be somebody anchoring for community.
Joanne, I bet.
It's Joanne. See, Joanne, we turned the camera.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Welcome.
So, see, Joanne, half the crowd's over there on the other side. I tried to get them all over here.
We're shy. There's a pumpkin cap.
They're shy over there. Okay, so this will all be recorded. You're on the recording, Joanne. So here, let me, I'll put you on, I'll put me on pin here so you're not. There you go. Oh, Joanne, if you have a question, just use the chat and then I can see the chat question come up. Okay. Where were we? The process of life. So like that was just a process, right? It's like, okay, there's something going on here. And then does any of you have that kind of meta awareness, like where you can't escape your own awareness? You become aware that even the dysfunction that's coming up, and you're trapped in knowing that you're doing it anyway while you're doing it. You guys experience that? It's sort of maddening to be stuck in the dysfunction, knowing you're doing it, but you still can't pull yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just maddening sometimes. So that's what it feels like sometimes, is like, oh, I'm stuck over here. Like today was definitely some dysfunction for me. I hermitized in my room, my little studio room, until 12:30. Hermitized, just like, you know, had a lot to do, and just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to be a little baby today and take care of myself. And that's a process, right? So let's say that chemistry. Let's go back to chemistry and vitamin D, for example. So a client comes in, they say, hey, I got low vitamin D, Craig. I need to take D3. And I say, well, that's like taking aspirin for pain.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do that? It's a symptom of something. And guess what low vitamin D actually means? D3. let's start with, what are they actually measuring? What are they, when they say you have low vitamin D, what are they actually saying? Let's start there, right? Let's start with the parameter they're saying. So what is the D they're measuring? Anybody want to know what that is?
Yes, remind us.
It's a hormone.
No, let's go to the chemistry of it though, because that's the language they have. That's the language we have to bridge. So it's 25-OHD3, which means 25 hydroxy vitamin D3. Yeah. So it's the storage form of D that we're measuring. It's the storage part of the D process. Because the D process is sunlight strikes the body, the cholesterol in the skin gets converted into this thing we call vitamin D hormone, and that initiates these processes for the body to mobilize for the extra light coming in. And D is part of this process that they've singled out this one part and not told you about the vitamin A part of it, right? Or the vitamin F part of it, vitamin K part of it. They leave all that other part out conveniently, right? Why? Because they want medically managed people. They don't want health. If they wanted help, they would have given it to us 100 years ago or more. When they fired the last true head of the FDA, who had the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906 that was never enforced, when all white flour and white sugar was supposed to have a cancer-causing label on it. That was Harvey Wiley, the last true head of the FDA. He was ousted out of office. The act was never enforced. He wrote a book about it in 1922, Crimes Against the Food Law. That book was never, no one ever heard about it except people, freaks like me, and you know why? Because they don't want us to know about it. But the information's all there. We're talking about.
Can you say his name one more time?
Harvey Wiley, we honor this man, Harvey Wiley, the last true head of the FDA, who tried to tell people that white flour and sugar cause cancer. Why? Let's go there. Why are they so damaging to the body? Monica, this is about alchemy, right? The periodic table of the elements. So what is pure white flour and white sugar in terms of the periodic table of the elements?
The worst part's just the carbon and hydrogen and oxygen without the full whole food that could allow it to be digested properly and not just go in as poison.
So what are petroleum products made out of primarily?
Oh, and the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen as well, right?
So refined, what they never told us was that refined oils and refined sugars and flours are hydrocarbons. Reverse the word carbohydrate, what do you get? Hydrated carbon.
Yeah.
They've done this like understand, that's why you never say when a cop says, do you understand? You never say yes, because that means you're standing under him. Never ever say, do you understand? And say yes. You say, no, I don't.
I might comprehend.
I might comprehend you, but I don't stand under you.
What you're saying.
So they've done this wordplay to us. And that's part of why I teach natural law. What is natural law? The real laws of the universe, I have people that come to see me because they know that we're all craving to live the rules and the laws and the order of the universe, but we've been inverted, like David Icke might say, to the opposite. And so life process is the study of life. And how do I know this works? Well, let me see. I've got a broken neck 35 years ago, should have died. I have a double inguinal hernia now. I have a blown MCL 19 years ago, no surgery. I have a hiatal hernia. I had a traumatic brain injury 9 years ago, should have died. And my girlfriend made love to me twice and brought me back to life, basically, when I don't know how my thing even worked downstairs. Let's see. Shall I go on the other 1,000 stories, So it's about what is spirit bringing forth, right? There is no medical explanation, for why some of us are alive. Like most of us in this room, most people that come to me, they've had, they're like the empaths, all the sensitive people all found each other because of COVID, And when you sense things other people don't feel, what do you get? Ostracism. Generally in our society. When I had an Indian client today, and we were talking about like people like me and us, we were given money unconditionally in India because people in there know that you need strong spiritual people to support the community just by their presence, because their very presence is harmonizing. Like she knows the stuff that I know, like in China, in old China, if the town was in disharmony, they'd go get a priest from the monastery, bring him down into town, put him in a hut, feed him, make him feel good. That's all they would do. He wouldn't do anything but just meditate in town, and the town would reharmonize in a few days, just because of his presence. And we are those people, I believe. We're just not trained to be a lightning rod on the planet for all the energies coming from the heavens and the earth and merging in us. We're not trained in how to, carry the bars as one avenue, right? To work with natural law. And so different cultures, like Adyashanti likes to say, you had to work 6 months to a year outside the Zen monastery, camped out on the snow to prove your worthiness for the things you can buy in a book now for $10. Ajahn pokes at this a lot. Like there's a reason why these secrets were kept hidden from the average, low IQ, sort of no judgment there, but person. Yeah. Yeah, Joanna makes a good point. I see this as theater more than ever. Like, this is theater. And the part of me, I was telling this Indian client today, like, if I'm talking from a place where I'm planning what I'm saying, I'm not really in the right place anymore. I'm hopefully in a place where it's just coming through and people are getting what they need in the moment in the right context. So life process then is, we see results, and that's where if you study results in health, you can't go to double-blind study science. Why? Because life isn't double-blind study science. Chemistry is, pharmaceuticals are, but pharmaceuticals in my world are level 3 poisons. Common food is level 1, and then plants like golden seal and valerian and passion flower and kava are level 2 because there's a cumulative toxicity to their use. Nutraceuticals like thiamine and D3 are level 2. Why? Because if you keep taking them, you can't break them down fast enough that you're taking them in and they accumulate in the tissues and it causes dysfunction. That mainly it's in the mitochondria, and we have this whole model of we have one mitochondria in our cells. Our heart cells have like 20,000 mitochondria per cell. And so we've been fed this baloney about our mitochondria, see? These little energy warehouses, they need magnesium and copper to control metabolism. How many people are talking about magnesium and copper for metabolism? Like 0. One man is Morley Robbins of the Root Cross Protocol. Morley, we love you. You're a god. He used to be the magnesium man. And he has a magnesium advocacy group on Facebook. And so what we weren't taught is that every reaction involving energy in the body involves magnesium. Every reaction of production of ATP has magnesium as a cofactor. So therefore, if you are magnesium deficient, you will be energy deficient by definition. Now that blew my mind. I read that like 3 or 4 years ago. And that's another Noelle Noli thing. Thank you, Noelle, for getting me the root cause protocol. She was my initiating girlfriend that would feed me stuff and then abandon it and leave me to go deep with it. But fuck yeah, it was awesome. Morley Robbins was because of her. And because, she's one of us, because she questions, like, this doesn't make any sense. Look what this guy's saying. For example, so this metabolism of iron thing is we take way too much iron in, and I agree with him, because iron causes cancer in its own right, so does oxygen. So that's why oxidative metabolism involving iron especially has to have copper, these copper enzymes, and these magnesium cofactors so that oxygen doesn't burn out of control in the mitochondria. We call those free radicals. If you don't have enough, we call that anaerobic metabolism, right? So too much fire, here's where, that's water and fire, isn't it? Too much free radicals is fire, too little is water, or cold. So there's one of those dualities of yin and yang right there. Anabolic is building up, right? It's a process of building up. Catabolism is a process of tearing down. So you could take medical language and turn it into yin and yang processes. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Kind of getting lost. Too many things going on here, digressions. So the life process then is about the body using, like in the plant, it's using light, and water is wicking up from the ground, and minerals like earth, air, water, and fire, I think, right? So the plant is literally making something out of nothing. light and water and minerals and air, and it's making its blood from that, chlorophyll. And here's the mystery of life, folks. Chlorophyll and human blood are identical, except one thing. What's at the center of chlorophyll? What's at the
You
center?
said horsehair,
So they're identical. Pardon?
horsehair and blood? Or what did you say? Are identical? What did you say?
Chlorophyll,
Not
Oh, chlorophyll.
horsehair, spider's legs, squirrel feces,
horsehair
flying
You've got an
squirrel.
echo. There's an echo coming up. That's why it's a little difficult. It kind of echoes.
Oh yeah, it's a big room.
Yeah.
That's gonna
Yeah.
change soon. I have a mic. I just gotta get everything. It's just so many parts for filming.
Oh, too bad. I was gonna second horsehair.
Chlorophyll. Thank you for chiming in, Joanne. So yeah, chlorophyll. I have a big whiteboard for this, and actually,
Oh, yeah.
oh, you remind me. But too many digressions.
Okay.
I have a screen share I could do with that, but I want to stay on the tangent for you guys. So, and human blood is identical.
Yeah, chlorophyll and blood.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Doesn't anybody think that's odd that no one's ever pointed out to us in a health class
Yeah,
that our blood and the plant's blood is the same?
because plants are the.
At 5 years old, wouldn't you want to have been told that like at 5 years old? I would have wanted to know that at 5 years old, but I wasn't told that shit, you know?
No,
I'm like, well, I would have loved to have known that. It would have given my life a whole new meaning, knowing that
yeah,
these plants going around me were just like me in some way,
oh, yeah.
right? A whole new meaning to life. Wow, really? Wow. Okay, and then here's another plant-human correspondence. Where is the plant brain?
Where's the what?
The plant's brains
Brains, right.
In the roots?
and the roots. Where's the human brain? Upstairs, opposite. What do humans exhale? CO2.
Yeah.
What do plants like? CO2.
uh-huh.
What do plants exhale? O2. What do humans like? O2. Where's the human sex organs?
Mid-
At the bottom, mid to bottom. Where's the plant sex organs?
Top.
At the top. So I was showing a friend this, the opium poppy videos from last year. Oh, excuse me, Afghanistan, papaver poppies. Oh, this is private membership anyway. So I grow them every year, and they start out with a neck. They grow up and then they form this flower head with a little bulb, and it looks like a limp penis.
Mhm.
And then as the plant matures, the flower head turns upwards like an erect penis. And then it sits upright for maybe half of a day or to a day. And then the little green capsule, if you watch it, it literally explodes off like an orgasm and the flower bursts out. I've never seen anything like it. It goes from limp to erect and then an orgasm, and then the flower heads out and the bees are on it within 5 or 10 minutes. It'll be like 6 bees and they're going, it's like they're drunk. They can't get in there fast enough. I was watching the video with this girl the other day. We were like, what? Those bees are going psycho, you know? And it's like, what are they doing? They're getting at the bar.
Yeah.
They're going to the freaking bar, man. Beings like to get high. So they're going down there into the bar because the poppy, the little holes in the poppy head, that's where the nectar comes out. And they're down there sipping at the bar at the keg.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, so that's a plant orgasm brings in insects,
That's some good honey.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
right? So these correspondences are part of what Stephen Herod Buhner wrote a book in the 90s called The Lost Language of Plants. How cool is that?
Yeah.
The Lost Language of Plants. And then he wrote another book called Plant Intelligence in the Imaginal Realm more recently, which is a great book. And I have some of my information about how consciousness works that I can verbalize because of that book, actually. And The Secret Life of Plants is that same kind of genre in Peter Tompkins' work, Secret Life of Plants. Great stuff about the mysteries of plants and life and how plants actually have sentience, folks. And so, you know, I had a teacher that was, you know, I was a vegan in the 90s, and she tore me to shreds. You know, I had leather shoes, tore me to shreds there. Just picking apart little things about my life. And she's like, Craig, there's a reason why in Celtic they have the snake eating its own tail. You know, so it's all about gratitude. If you kill a plant, When I started herbal medicine, actually, I was harvesting plants. I kept having nightmares afterwards. When I went to a teacher and she said, "Are you giving thanks before you harvest the plants?" And I'm like, no, because that's why the plants are giving you nightmares, because you're not being thankful. Wow. And the nightmares went away as soon as that intention was launched.
Wow.
Well, that's how I found out I was a plant whisperer, because I do the bidding of the plants or they drive me insane. It's not a choice anymore. If I don't water them, I'll have like 100 voices screaming at me. It's like I have like 200 plants in my friend's yard. Hooray! It's like your kids, driving you nuts when they're not being fed. That's how it is. Every second they'll pop in my consciousness. Craig, did you water me? Craig, you gonna water me? Craig, water? It's like no other thoughts can even get into that. So it's like, okay, I'll water you, and then they leave me alone. Incredible. So process, right? So they go back to D3. So the sunlight hits your skin, it activates the cholesterol, be made into this hormone. But what else is cholesterol involved with? They have all these statin drugs interfering with cholesterol metabolism. #1 selling drug in the world. Messing with the #1 molecule of life, in my opinion. Cholesterol. It's not evil at all. So what's cholesterol made to? What else is it made to in the body? It's the backbone of D3. What else is it the backbone of?
Your sex hormones.
Your sex hormones, your stress hormones,
The brain.
your brain, your cell membranes, that's 5. Bile is the backbone of bile.
Wow. That's right.
Nah, it's not important. Let's block the metabolism of it. I won't tell you why.
Worse than not important. It's actually dangerous for something they
What
say.
do you do? My brother's been on statins for decades.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
All bullshit.
I'll say it outright in anybody's face. It's a drug. They invented a whole syndrome, the Framingham heart studies and all that. Because I had 2 years of statistics in college, folks, for my, I was not going to be an architect and you had to have a lot of number analysis and engineering crap. And after 2 years of statistics in the 80s, I realized you can take any set of numbers and manipulate them any way you want, any desired outcome.
Yep.
And that's what they did with the Framingham heart study. That's what they did with COVID. You died with COVID versus of COVID. One little distinction, right?
Yeah.
The hospital gets $33,000. And they don't tell that to the general public because most people don't even have the grasp of that, So, but that's the game being played with I was talking to a friend about the very basis of science was changed with Aristotle in Greece. His premise was, this is an Islamic guy out in Africa, and he's like, his premise is, no one remembers the Greeks anymore. Why do you think? Because they never really embodied spirit. They borrowed from others. And so we're trying to put into words these processes and have agreement about how we're going to measure them and standardize them so we can all agree on how to take care of people. So if we can agree that cholesterol is a pretty important central molecule for a lot of processes in the body, then wouldn't it make sense to, in a world of truth, you would share, here's the side effects, maybe there are some good uses for statins. I've seen a few people make good rationalizations for them. I personally think there's no good uses for them because the data is very clear. When you're on a statin, the all-cause mortality is you will die sooner on a statin of any other cause of death than someone not on a statin. You just won't die of a cholesterol-related disease, and that's the number. Oh, and by the way, if you have low cholesterol, there's more violent crimes, more depressions, more suicides, more mental derangements, and a lower quality of life in people with lower cholesterol than higher cholesterol. By the way, but they want to give statins to kids while they're developing. And the COVID shots and GMO foods. And what do you got? You got cyborgs, what you got? You got cyborgs. And so, well, I tell people back to the life process thing, what is the most thing of life is a fresh growing plant. That's what vitamin C is. I'll give you an example. I remember the Ian story with the green leaf. So Ian is one of these sensitive people like us. And so I have this gynostemma growing, and it's literally making 20 to 30 new leaves a day that didn't exist the day before. Out of nothing, right? As far as I can see, I'm watching this thing that was nothing a few weeks ago to it's now this big. It's incredible. Every day it's like this expanding jungle. And I'm watching this thing, and I go, Ian, I'm gonna give you one of these leaves that didn't exist yesterday. I'm not gonna tell you anything about this plant. Nothing scientific. just eat it and tell me what your hit is on it. He eats it and he goes, it feels to me like this plant takes sunlight and converts it into leaf energy very efficiently. And I didn't tell him anything. And I go, this plant actually works with AMPK on the mitochondrial level to improve mitochondrial metabolism. And it's an adaptogen like ginseng. And it's a complete protein and it's rich in chlorophyll. And he sort of nailed it with just that one simple phrase like a child would say, right? You go to a Krishnamurti pops in. Anybody know Krishnamurti and his work? Once the child labels the bird, he no longer knows the bird. Once the child labels the bird, he no longer knows the bird. Why would he say that? Once you label something, I know what that is, which is the opposite of true inquiry, which is, I don't know what that is. Please show me more, God. That's why Chief Seattle said to the white man, I can't teach you anything because you already know everything. That's what the Indians kept saying to the white man. There's nothing we can teach you because you already know everything. This means you're not available, right? Like if you have a partner that doesn't want to talk about stuff, how far can you go? Not very far with a one-sided conversation, right? You need to give and take of like, how are you feeling? What's your response? You know, how's that land in you? Like a back and forth versus a one-way, right? And that's what life is doing, is it's sort of a figure eight. Like I said, nature, you plant one seed, you get 10,000. Well, when I noticed that, after I broke my neck and I'm in the hospital, I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be another way to do this, because I was always into the J.R. Tolkien's and the fantasy novels and the magic and whatnot. And I was like, I know that there's something to this, that life is magical, and I'm being sold a very low standard of life. Right? Because then it can dumb you down into hopelessness very quickly with a low standard of life.
Yeah.
But fortunately, in the world of duality, the process of as the darkness increases, so does the light. That's why, I mean, I go to YouTube every night to see some Braveheart dudes and women out there just standing up. It's so inspiring. Like John Talks on YouTube. John Talks on YouTube, you rock. He has these little memes, like 30 seconds to a minute, these little videos of just poking fun at all the lunacy around the planet, and the Canadian thing, and the Ottawa truckers just going, ah! These guys just standing up and saying, F you, take my money, take everything. I got the community behind me. A bunch of them were saying, I don't care what you do with anything else. I got these people behind me. F off. You know, and that's why the Bravehearts and the Braveheart women come out, because it's like the darkness is that bad. Spirit creates the light enough to counteract it. And that's what we're seeing around us everywhere. That's why I don't despair. I mean, I won't say that. I try not to despair. Because when it comes, you can't deny it, right? In the middle of a panic attack, the worst thing to do is deny that it's there, right? I mean, an anxiety attack. Oh, I'll just spiritualize it away. Who am I? Who is this being? How's that? Oh, just Byron King this way. You know, do the work on it. It's like, well, why don't you just freaking feel it for a while? You know, drop in. How does that thought feel? That's a little more juicy. Ooh, wow. Now I got to feel something. Right, ladies, and even guys these days. Boy, getting guys to feel sometimes like pulling teeth. So the life process, then I'm gonna go back to D3. And so did you all know that vitamin A is actually the sunlight vitamin? It's vitamin A is actually your sunlight sensor, is what Morley calls it. And vitamin D is your sunglasses, it's your sunlight filter. And that if you want to raise, like you see low hemoglobin, like, oh, you have low hemoglobin, you're low oxygen in your cells. Well, they give you iron medically for that. And there's studies that goes back 90 years that shows when you give iron medically, especially, it temporarily raises hemoglobin, but then it lowers it back to lower than where you started. Even if you up the ante, it's always back below. Why do you think? Because iron isn't what's needed to raise oxygen levels. Vitamin A is, which happens to come from, they used to do liver or cod liver oil. And if you did liver, you had the added benefit of the extra copper and zinc. Because when you take zinc without copper, you chelate copper out of the body, and then your mitochondria start doing free radical metabolism. Because it upsets oxygen metabolism. When you take out the copper out, your body can't make ceruloplasmin and peroxidase, these two enzymes you never hear about. They can be measured. They're like $70 on the lab report through my thing out of pocket. And insurance wise, it would cost, oh my God, your copay would be more than I would get you for out of pocket. It'd be like $1,500 for 3 or 4 of these labs. Why do you think that's so? They don't want us to know, right? They make the test horribly difficult and they make the stupid test easy. I know because I've been studying this for 10 years. So beef liver and liver was the remedy, pretty much tried and true throughout. Anyone that was studying this, and the paperwork goes back into the 20s and the 30s, cod liver oil, because preformed vitamin A or retinol was only an animal food. It does not occur in the vegan world. And so in the vegan world, beta carotene, the carotenoids, have to convert to fat soluble vitamin A because carotenoids are water soluble. So a carotenoid is not vitamin A, and it causes jaundice if the body can't convert it. Like excessive carrot juice will cause the skin to pigment orange. That's because the body can't get the pigment processed fast enough in the retinol. And that's the problem that we're not taught about is, so isn't that interesting that you've got this water soluble pigment that plants make, the body turns it fat soluble. And what does that involve? The liver and the lymphatic system and cholesterol again. So there's this mystery of this whole D3 thing in the middle of it, and cholesterol is tied in with it because what is D3? It's a cholesterol derivative. Did they ever tell you that? No. So ideally, our ancestors would take vitamin F for a sunscreen, and there's various ways you could do that. So the Standard Process Company has a Cataplex F, they call it. It's a vitamin F concentrate. But our ancestors, interestingly enough, would boil barley or whatever grain they had, or soak it and drink the Rejuvilac from the soaked sprouts. And that gave them a form of vitamin F that they could go work in the fields in the sun and not get sunburned, is the anecdotal evidence. So the different peoples of the world had different ways of doing this, where that was sort of my wet dream, because I've surfed for 45 years, is how do I get a sunscreen on I can take orally? So I don't want to put that toxic stuff on my skin. And I found out a few things with this Cataplex F, since I've been taking that for about 12 years, is I don't get sunburned as long as I get enough of it in my body. And when I didn't have enough of it, and I was in LA surfing in the hot sun, I came in and I found an aloe plant, tore off, the green part, and then rubbed that juice all over my face, and then let that dry, and then 2 more applications or layers, and I went and surfed another 45 minutes, and I did not get sunburn. But it washes off, so you gotta, I did 3 layers. So I believe nature has remedies that we don't need to go to pharmaceuticals for, like zinc oxide and sunscreen clogs your pores. Your skin needs to breathe, folks. That's why, what's that massage biotone crap? Yeah, massage school, biotone, remember that stuff?
It's organic.
I had that stuff rubbed on my skin and I felt like I couldn't breathe all night. I'd go home after the massage school, when Twin Lakes was open, and I'd be like, I feel like I'm suffocating. It was that biotone, and I would shower it off and be like, like it was clogged up all my freaking pores. But I was a trained herbalist, and back in the 90s, my teachers all said, never put anything on your skin you wouldn't put in your mouth. So that was my standard. Lotions, all that stuff, no. So this Indian client today, we were talking about castor oil, it's a universal. If you dilute castor oil, it's great anywhere. Skin, eye problems, lymph problems. And I'm growing castor bean plants. If you can get a castor plant growing, you can harvest the seeds, and we can get a castor oil press, and then you get your own fresh castor oil. It's a weed. It's a weed tree. Down by Ojai and Santa Barbara along the coast there, those little valleys that go in, they're all full of castor bean trees. They're all thousands of them. It's a weed tree, I call it. All right, digressing. So if you're trying to do this from food, I took the Cataplex F product, but if you're trying to do it from food, you want to look up vitamin F. And in my membership system in the Google Drive, I have a folder with some of the annals of vitamin F. And the best way to find it just on the web is a Saline River Press And you look in the archives and type in vitamin F, and you'll get a few articles written by Royal Lee and a few other people about it. They're written in the 40s and the 50s. They were all buried, they didn't want us to know all this stuff. But vitamin F will act as a sunscreen because vitamin D's action is get stuff into the bloodstream. That's its action. It's calcium, right? Helps calcium absorption. What is calcium absorption as a process? Getting it into the bloodstream, right? Absorbing it from the gut and getting it into the blood. Unfortunate side effect they don't tell us about vitamin D. What is sunstroke? What is sunstroke? It's vitamin D poisoning. They don't bother to tell us that when they give us all these 10,000, 15 zillion thousand IUs of D. Oh, you need 15,000 IUs over the next 3 months, and then they'll get your levels of your storage hormone up to 50 or 60, even though it has nothing to do with the active form. They don't have you measuring calcitriol, which is the active form of D. If you get both readings and compare the two, you get a much more accurate sense of your D. But guess what? The vitamin D test on the out-of-pocket's about $30. Calcitriol is like $70. So they conveniently make it twice as expensive. So you don't want to look. So when they say D3, when it's low, here's what we actually know. Inflammation. So when your D is below 20, if it's above 20, it's not a good marker for anything. But if it's below 20, you have inflammation. And so by taking more D3, does that address the inflammation or the inflammatory lifestyle? No, it doesn't. It's like taking aspirin, it's palliative. So you address the inflammatory lifestyle, and then your D levels will naturally go up. One lady tried more sunlight. I had a client up in the mountains here, and she said, well, try more sunlight. It didn't go up. She's already getting enough sunlight. She had inflammation because of, well, let's see. I had a common indulgence at the time. There was pu'er tea and chocolate, I think 2 or 3 other things. And that was her inflammation because they were a daily habit. So it's a daily inflammatory habit. Right? Hey, sneeze.
I thought chocolate in small doses is very good.
According to who? In what world of reality?
Chocolate industry, of course.
Yeah.
Dr. Ricola.
Well,
Large doses.
I'll give you guys, so Carrie Bone, who's a world famous herbalist, he runs the Medi Herb line that sells with standard process. I really admire Carrie's work. But Carrie loves chocolate. And so what did he do? He did a whole PowerPoint rationalizing his own use of chocolate by saying, if you have an ounce of chocolate, this chemistry here and here happens. And I counter with, and how come chocolate's one of the top 10 allergens then? You look at the allergy tables, what's consistently one of the top 10 allergens in the world is chocolate. Yes. So how can it be good for you and a top 10 allergen at the same time?
I thought it was a dosage, like if you stay under a certain amount, it's an antioxidant or it's something beneficial in small doses.
I'm going to call chocolate a level 2 food. It's not meant for daily use, but you use it ceremonial like the Aztecs and Mayans did for certain things, and raw cacao had whole kinds of spiritual uses and consciousness shifting uses and whatnot. Let's go back to, why does the plant make theobromine, which is caffeine, or theophylline or caffeine? Why do plants make that compound? Let's be clear. It's an insecticide. Caffeine is an insecticide in its pure form. That's why plants make it.
Exactly.
Plants are not human-centric. Plants aren't making caffeine for our pleasure and productivity. Plants are making caffeine to help themselves live. It's a poison. And we've been brainwashed. So you have a poison that's a diuretic every day to piss out all your minerals? No. Maybe 3 times a month at most.
Green tea and stuff also,
Yes.
like not green tea every day.
Now,
Yeah.
let's go back a step. Green tea is not just caffeine. Coffee is not just caffeine. Coke. So in the green tea process, it's a much more healthful process for the right type of person. There's a chocolate person, there's a coffee person. I know I've seen them. Like my brother can have a cup of coffee and go right to bed. If I have a cup of coffee this time of night, I'm not sleeping because I can't metabolize it, but he metabolizes it like that. And so it's all about our liver. See how fast can we? So some of us have places where we're stuck, and that's what they call the methylation pathway. Oh, I can't have regular methylated B. So I'm gonna have the methylated cobalamin and the B12 here. You know what they're actually saying? In nature, you don't get these isolated molecules, right? The B12 is part of the whole B complex. It's a big process that's initiated in our cells. So when they give you, well, guess where the B vitamins come from, first of all, when you buy them from the store. What's the starter material? The B vitamins. Why does Rainbow Light and all those companies that have pure crystalline Bs have a little label that says USP? What does USP mean?
US Pharmaceutical.
United States Pharmacopoeia.
Pharmaco.
So the Bs are coming from Pfizer and some pharmaceutical clearinghouse, and the starter material is coal mining waste called coal fly ash. And they refine it into the chemical B vitamin that's not really the B, but they'll call it the B. And then people can't methylate it. Well, does it make sense? Your body wouldn't want to methylate it? Because it's part of this big process and part of the phytochemistry of what B6 is missing. Part of the phytochemistry of B12 is missing. Part of the phytochemistry of what folic acid is, which is B9. See, there's all this phytochemistry process to it and frequencies and energies, and they put in this dead chemical and they call it that. And doesn't it make sense that you wouldn't be able to, some people would have problems in today's world, you know, processing that? It's all methylation problems are, it's just problems processing the chemical. So if you take natural Bs like standard process has, you don't have the problem with methylation. Why? So you're not getting the toxic unmethylated B anyway. So guess what the methylated B's starter material is? Coal mining waste also. They just make a different chemical out of it.
Wait, folate.
So methylcobalamin, methylfolate comes from the same starter material that the synthetic folic acid comes from also. Isn't that disgusting?
Yes.
From, I want to clarify something
Yeah.
later.
It's, so when you take the natural, like when you get B's from liver or nutritional yeast, you don't have to, you bypass all those concerns, right? Because nature's already provided you with the enzymes and the cofactors to digest the process. It's like, that's why raw milk is much better than pasteurized. You cannot be lactose intolerant by definition when you drink raw milk, because the enzyme lactase is present in the raw milk. So if you have problems with raw milk, it's mainly because of the proteins and your immune system more than it is the lactose per se. So that's what they don't tell you about this methylated B thing. And I first got wind of this when I was learning about SNPs, SNI, which is single nuclear or something polymorphism. That's what the methylation problem is. So I was studying this 10, 11, 12 years ago with the standard process colleagues and the doctors with that company. And they were seeing like this guy was selling no less than $1 million a year of standard process in this town in Texas. So Stuart White was his name. He had a waiting list 3 to 6 months. And he was a chiropractor and naturopath that went nutrition 20 years ago and learned he learned a really interesting muscle testing technique that had scientific validity. So he had a waiting list out the door. And so people ask him like, well, do you do any methylated anything? And he goes, no, because I'm selling whole food in the first place. I have never seen a methylation problem with any of my standard process B vitamin products. And the guy's selling $1 million a year of product. So his clout or credibility is high. Right? So that's what I heard 10, 11 years ago. And I said, should I worry about this? Maybe I shouldn't, you know? Now, the people that are really, if their consciousness is really stuck on it, because that's really the problem, because we can change our DNA just by changing our thoughts, but they don't teach us that either. You know, Bruce Lipton kind of broke that open years ago with the epigenetic stuff. So it's really about consciousness and how do we get in a positive frame of mind? And that's where Cindy comes in with the breathing, right? Well, breathing helps our consciousness stabilize, right? Thank you. Well, Cindy got me back into breathing because I kind of had forgotten about it in my practice. And then, you know, I started thinking like, you know, maybe I should start focusing on breathing again as just a core thing to teach people. And that's when your group started, you know, it's like, wow, that's timely.
Yeah, are you going to talk about the cleanse at all tonight?
Yeah, I'm getting to the end here. Thank you for the request because it's getting close to 9. So if you want to, so here's a story of D3, Ben. So the remedy for D3 is get yourself some cleansing and do some work with your liver and your fat metabolism, because D is a fat soluble vitamin. So that involves the lymphatic system, the gallbladder, the portal circulation, the liver, the pancreas, and the gut lining. It's a big thing to process. It's generally a 12 to 18 month process. People get these little tiny little cleanses for 3 weeks, like 21 days, and they're done. It's like, you got like, you have the onion, you have like 10 more layers. You're just getting started. You got a dirty sponge, you squeeze it once, you dig all the dirt out. Oh, not even close. So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I look at the sclera and the tongue. I got a follow-up today, and the lady's tongue, didn't look so good a few months back. So hey, let's do a follow-up today. And then, she's feeling better on a lot of levels, but not as far along as she wants to be. So let's look at your tongue, and then it's like immediate perk, because it's like, ew, look at my tongue 2 months ago. Look how much better it is now. Right? You see the color change, and it's a little smaller, and that really buoys people to take the next step. Like, see, you only thought you were doing this well, but you're actually doing this much better. And that's part of being a coach, right? You remind people of areas they've had symptom amnesia from. Oh yeah, I forgot I was doing that. Yeah, I forgot I had that symptom. I used to suffer over there, and you just reminded me how good I'm actually doing. Because our minds dwell where? In negativity, right? We have to usually train our mind to go back to the positive because of our programming. So that's where the cleanse comes in. So there's a D3 story here, Ben, quickly, is that there are numerous people that report into Morley Robbins in the root cause protocol that after years of taking D3, they now have horrible, horrendous liver and hormone problems. And one lady had been working on it for 2 years and she still wasn't done. So there's a type of person where D3 is really like poison. And for most people, it's fine. You use it and you metabolize it out. It might take a few weeks, but that's where you don't want to be one of those people like her. And so a cleanse, then the way I like to do cleanses is there's a general template each season. Like the liver energy coming into spring is kind of the focus for the spring cleanse on April 1st. The winter cleanse focuses on the urinary system and the kidneys because it's all water. Well, how much water did we have this year in January, February? 0. During the 2 rainiest months of the year. Very, we're getting rain. And then the summer cleanse focuses on the fire element organ, which is the small intestine and the heart and the blood. And the fall cleanse focuses on the fall organs, which is the lung and the large intestine. So what we take in and let go, so to speak. So those are the 4 main systems. And then there's sort of an individual component. So we start with vitality, which is, there's a blood pressure check. You lie down for 5 minutes, take your blood pressure. Then you stand up and you immediately take the blood pressure. And that's called Dr. Ragland's test. And you compare the 2 readings, diastolic, systolic, and the pulse from lying down to standing up. And so Ragland's theory, this was in the 70s, was if you're lying horizontal, you can pump blood to the brain very easy. So you can lower the pressure and the pulse, right? You can debate that the heart's not pumping blood either, Dr. Cowan would say, but nevertheless, let's not go there. Let's stick with the brainwashed traditional model for now. So when you stand up, doesn't it make sense, since the brain is the major user of resources in the body, that you're going to have to pump blood uphill? And wouldn't it make sense you better raise the pressure in the system to get it uphill? So the way the test goes is when you stand up, it should rise about 5. The systolic should rise 5, the diastolic and the pulse. So if the body can't do that and it starts falling, in my experience over 10 years now, when it falls 20 to 30 or more, usually those people are deep doo-doo, deep adrenal fatigue. And there's one woman was in bed for 3 months all summer, consistently falling 30, 35 points. And my colleagues will have you call a doctor if it's falling 30 or more, because a heart attack could be imminent. Because there's no resources, there's no savings account. You're running on fumes. The acupuncturist would do it with the pulse. So we can take a pulse reading, take the blood pressure, take photographs of the tongue and the eyes, fill out an intake form, and then we can get a pretty good customized cleanse for that person. And that's what we're trying to do. Is the common things we want to do as a group are this, but your area, like I have people that are, if you're tired, do you want to clean up your room? No. When your cells are tired, are they going to detox well? No. So if your blood pressure is falling 20 points when you stand up, you've been stressed and just moved for 3 months, your partner just broke up with you, there's no deep cleanse for that person. The cleanse will be a sleeping cleanse and tonics and adaptogens and rest and massages. I've done this so long, I know that. If you put that person into a cleanse, Monica.
Right here.
That's what Monica just experienced, right? Trying to cleanse when you're exhausted.
Cannot.
Doesn't work. You go backwards and you feel worse.
Yep.
So there has to be vitality, and there are objective ways to measure that I teach and know now. So that's a couple of them. And then if you have a lot of, like I see in the whites of your eyes, like, oh, there's a lot of blue in the whites of the eyes, then we know you have hypoxia, which means maybe cleansing isn't the best thing to do. Maybe we need to work on heavy copper, heavy magnesium foods, and have you give blood maybe to get that extra iron out of your system that's clogging everything up. Because giving blood's the fastest way to get storage form of iron out of the body, ferritin specifically. And guys, there's a guy in our circle that does it, and he reports he has lowered his ferritin levels quite a bit by giving blood regularly. I don't know if he wants his name mentioned, so I won't mention it, but many of us in our group know him. And clinically, that's what I was taught to do. So if my ferritin levels went above 100, I would just go start giving blood. Although, what do they do at Red Cross with this COVID baloney?
Nothing. Well, they tried to say, oh, did you get your test? And I said, I'm not doing a test. I'm walking if you want me to have a test. Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, good to hear. Thank you.
They test the blood after you give it, and apparently they throw it away if they see anything to do with the shots.
Really?
They don't keep any blood, people who got shot.
Yeah.
I don't, is that still true though, or is that like, if they're within that, like,
Right, well, that was the conversation months ago. I have not looked into it recently. Yeah, it's a good
I thought
question.
it was like if they had gotten it within
Where
the
did I
last
keep blood?
2 days or something.
It was just American Red Cross where,
Yeah.
we have blood drives.
Gross.
In my case, there was
Okay, it's 9 right now.
I do it for that reason, to lower my ferritin.
Yeah, I gotta go do that, so you can just look up.
No, but you're a woman, so you breathe it enough.
No, I'm a
Not
menopause
anymore.
woman.
Well, okay, but maybe you don't have rights. Okay, got it. Never mind, sorry.
We have lab work with her, so we have a certainty of where she's at, because we know her lab work. And that's why it's good to sometimes just pay the $100, get the lab work, and then you're certain, right? It's like you definitely have high levels of ferritin, but you want your serum iron, the iron in the blood, you want the ferritin, and then you want the iron binding capacity and was that enzyme GGT, this liver enzyme. There's these things you got to check, because if you don't go deep enough, then you're incomplete information, and that means incomplete healing. So cleanse, a few details here. So the spring process is like, if you're choosing plants to cleanse with in the spring, you think new life. So you think a young carrot versus an old carrot. Think a young radish versus an old radish. Think a small collard green versus a large collard green. You think new life, small. Right? Think sprouts, right? Think gentle ferments. This is all new life spring, like really gentle kefir versus really long fermented kefir, like maybe a 1-day kefir ferment versus a 10-day kefir ferment. New life. You want to be lowering your sodium levels with the higher heat and more potassium-rich foods. That's the dance of summer and winter. Summertime, you want more potassium-rich foods, and wintertime, you want more sodium-rich foods. So your sodium-rich foods, by definition, are the more acidic foods: meat, dairy, grains, nuts, beans, grains. And then your potassium-rich foods are generally your fruits and your vegetables and your seaweeds. To generalize it and make it simple. So your alkaline forming foods are high in potassium, and your acidic forming foods are generally high in sodium. Strange, but true. But if you need more sodium, then I tell people, if you have a good form of salt, then a lot of our adrenal problems, adrenals and stomach love sodium. The adrenals and the stomach love sodium. So if you're craving salt and you're older, don't deny yourself, just make sure you're getting a good quality salt. Like you want a raw salt, like Celtic salt, or there's a company that does a jade bamboo salt over in Hawaii, and there's Colima salt in Mexico, and I have a guy in Africa I work with, and they know how to do it. They get seawater in the right place, and they just dry it in the sun. And when you dry stuff in the sun, the salt and the minerals is attached to the algae matrix, which is the protein. So the minerals are bound to life versus cooked to death in Morton iodized salt. And then they add in fake iodine and dextrose to hold the iodine in the fake salt and anti-kicking agents, and none of that's on the label. That's why people get edema and hypertension from salt. It's not because of the sodium, it's because of the way they refine it. I have never seen a case of blood pressure raised or edema on my unrefined salts for 30 years of practice. Never once. So, you know, the one bad use of salt is if a woman's heading into her period or she's getting ready to have her cycle, and excessive use of salt then will halt the cycle. Because what does salt do to meat? Makes it tough, like beef jerky. So you want more potassium-rich foods in your female cycle as you head towards menstruation. And you want your more, like, as you start to bleed and finish bleeding, that's when you want your really stronger foods in with more sodium in. And then as the cycle proceeds, you want to let go so that the body can let go, right? And have a nice smooth period. But are we taught that stuff? Nah.
So back to the cleanse.
Cleanse, thank you. So more potassium-rich foods, which implies, like, don't you want to eat more raw now? It's a little warmer. Like, I don't want to eat a lot of raw in the cold weather. Do you guys? So that more raw as a spring cleanse, and smaller foods and sprouts. And this is the season to get green juices. Like, there are the plants, like around here, you guys, there's wild radish greens everywhere, mustard greens everywhere, chickweed, miner's lettuce, young nettles, young milk thistles. You can be putting those in your blender and pureeing the bejesus out of them, then run them through a strainer. You've got power juice coming right out of the earth. And that's your anti-COVID, anti-jab remedy right there. Full of life, right? You don't need none of this other stuff per se. If you're a bad case, and I mean, if you were a high dose vaxxer with one of those contaminated lot numbers, then, you know, if you didn't die, then, you know, you might need some help. But that's where you're gonna go see someone like Tom Urema, or, you know, somebody that really is working more on a medical level. Because I'm a generalist, you know, somebody will come to me and I'll listen, the plants will tell me stuff, supplements, guidance will come in. But generally, when you've been given so much synthetic blah, blah, blah via these jabs, you might need a synthetic remedy, right, to get it out. And the arsenal I have is I'm not going to give synthetic per se because I don't like to play with poisons. Like, I don't play with belladonna, you know, or foxglove, digitalis. I don't play with that stuff because those herbs, if you give a wrong dose, someone could die. So in spring cleansing, then we don't do anything extreme. Like, if there's one product that somebody wants a simple cleanse with, it's called SP Cleanse. And Center Process sells that. It's vegan. It's only herbs basically and a few nutraceuticals, and that's about $30 for 150 capsules. So it'll last a week to 10 days. And there's the spring cleanse can involve, it starts April 1st, and it can involve fasting. And I think I'm going to publish a calendar of what my goals will be. But currently I'm not staying in a stable living environment, so I don't know how deep I'll be able to go. But I'd like to set a loose calendar as a group and say, on Friday nights, on community dinners, at least during the cleanse, you know, we can all give reports and talk about how we're doing. And there's 3 levels, like Chevrolet, I have a cleanse that goes 3 levels. There's the basic food chart level, which is basically like, take your supplements, take your herbs.
I don't even know, are people in the room cleansing? Like, is this interesting for people? Oops.
Yeah, if not, I thank you. You could take it offline if it's only for you.
Yeah, I want to make sure it's not just.
It's pretty, I have a quick elevator speech about it anyway.
Are there other folks in here who are gonna be?
Well, remember, there's going to be 40 people watching the video too, and no
But
one
just-
knows.
Sure, and here I'm curious.
Not right
I
now,
don't, sure, not right now, no, okay.
not right now.
But I'm curious about it. Just
Okay.
'cause I'm not cleansing doesn't mean I'm not curious.
Yeah, so let's talk about, there's ways that, like, if someone came in out of McDonald land and ate my diet, they would start cleansing spontaneously,
Yeah.
right? So for a lot of us, we take for granted that our diet's pretty clean, but it's all relative. Someone who's eating McDonald land, if they eat at our level, their body, their cells will start exploding toxins out immediately because they're finally giving foods, right? So on the level that, look, like where I'm at, I've got to fast to initiate any kind of cleansing these days because I've squeezed the sponge so many times. It's like, I don't really feel much of anything, so I need to go into like heavy enemas, heavy fasting. So it's all about the desired result. So the basic food chart is the simple, which is just basically eat what's on this list. And the psychology of it is, I can eat this versus what can't I have? This is what I can have. And then there's weekly challenges where each week there's a set of sort of goals. And if you want to go a little deeper, you're not too busy, then do the weekly challenges. It's like eating like a teaspoon of fennel seeds a day, or 5 cups of grated beets, or 3 cups of chia seeds, just to be funny about it. You know, it's a lot of something just to see what happens. And then there's daily challenges, and that could involve various levels of austerity, like fasting, being in silence, being in bed all day is another one.
Yeah, it's
Just
good.
try and lay in bed all day.
Mhm.
It's hard,
Mhm.
you know. You guys ever tried it? Just lay in bed all day?
It's not hard for a mom. If you're a mom, it's really easy.
Or if you're a cat.
If you're a
That's
cat,
good, that-
yeah.
I think our-
Or they like to lay in the sun. They would do that.
Well, my bed is in the sun, so I can use my bed.
Oh, so I think that's a good one for people that are used to like sort of avoiding themselves, you know. The challenge would be, hey, why don't you just, I'll give you an example. I had a client earlier this year, and I challenged her because I saw the problem was lack of self-awareness. So I said, okay, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to challenge you. How long do you think you could sit with yourself before driving yourself insane? I go, you know, whatever is challenging, but not too easy. And she goes, about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, I want you to sit in a chair, set a timer for 2 minutes, and just let everything be. Whatever thought comes, whatever feeling comes, whatever sensation comes, whatever itch comes, you know, just make it okay somehow. And I've gotten people doing this where they get so interested about what comes up when they just let everything be that they become meditators. It's like, wow, I never let my thoughts just be before. You know, so that's another one. So there's various ways that if you have a skilled, yeah, right, outgrew migraines. We want to type people really. That's really the point is when we get some context, like what are your goals for the cleanse? What are your intentions? Like, you know, I have a guy that he clearly wants to lose 15 pounds by the summer. Another lady, she's going to India and she wants to be clear about her diet before she goes to India. So that's the kind of, you want to have a clear goal. Like, why am I putting myself through this austerity? What do I want to get back? You know, so a clear intention is really nice coming in, because the intention is what leads us through when the temptations come.
Yeah.
The group, you know, the sangha, the community, and the intention is kind of the goal that gets us through it. And if you're interested in the cleanse, there's a page on the website. And any questions anybody want on film before we exit? And I want to thank Karsten.
Yeah.
Beautiful setting, golden light in the Zoom call here. Pretty. That's probably the best Zoom background we've had in a while. Well, golden like that, you know, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
You mean it's better than before?
God, before. Yeah. So we're gonna sign off here then and do the rest offline. Joanne, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah, have a good night, Joanne.
guys, too.
Hey.
Good night, Joanne.